Welcome to the Front End Nerdery Podcast, a podcast about front end development and design. I'm your host, Todd Libby, and I'll be talking with people in tech about a number of different topics focused on front end development and design as well. Today I have with me Homer Gaines. Homer is an interactive designer, front end developer, certified accessibility professional, yes, and
Yeah.
musical producer and artist. The music
Yep.
you hear at the start and finish of each episode of this podcast is from my friend and wizard at changing shirts midway through conference talks, Homer Gaines. Thank you for joining me today.
You are never gonna let me live that down, are you?
No, that was awesome, though. So, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
You literally just did. No, I'm kidding. Like you said, I front end developer that focuses on accessibility. My primary role for the past, I want to say 5, 6 years, has been working with companies to help set up design systems and integrate accessibility into those design systems. To help out the teams with the applications that they're building. Uh, but yeah, I've been doing this for what, going on 25, 26 years now, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah. So been in this for a minute. It's funny too, being here long enough to see good grief. Hold up. Let me turn off Slack.
No worries.
Okay. That was hilarious. All right, let's get back to it. So anyway, while I'm getting slacking. See, I was set up correctly on the other machine. This one here, everything is just buzzing up. But yeah, I've been doing this for a very long time. Back when it seemed like when we all started, we all had to be full stack developers. Because no one knew what was going on. You were designing it, building it, setting up the emails, setting up the servers, because nobody was doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then time went on, and we all became specialists. And it seems like we're going back to the everybody has to do everything in the kitchen sink mode again, which is strange. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And yeah, like you said, I write music. I've been doing that. Good grief, man. I started drumming when I was able to pick up sticks. You
Yep.
know, my mom's side of the family is very musical. They've been in the industry for years. Grew up in Detroit. My parents did, around Motown, so I was always around, you know, that creative energy, and it just has always stayed with me. And I've been blessed enough to be able to uh, compose music for plays, independent films, commercials, and for myself. So it's been a fun ride, and I'm still on it. So loving it.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of the music, by the way.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And like, I was listening to the podcast, and even though I remember you asking me, "Hey, can I use one of your songs to lead into the podcast?" I forgot about it. And so when I listened to the one that you did with Zeldman, the song started playing, and my wife perked up. She was like, "Wait, are you playing your song right now?" I said, "No, Todd has that at the beginning of the podcast." She said, "Nice." I was like, "So I appreciate that. Love it. Love it."
Yeah, you're the first one I thought about because I was like, I need some nice, relaxing music to lead in and out of the podcast. So you came to mind right away because you know when we started following each other on Twitter and I found out you did music, I'm like, okay, I got to check this guy's music out. And when I did, I was like, all right, I'm all aboard this train because this is just one nice, chill ride. So
I got
helps me
some
get through a workday too.
that you know what, and it's funny enough. That's what I write the music for. A friend of mine, he told me, he was like, "You write for the listener." I said, "Yeah, because I don't do a whole lot of promotion or anything like that because I'm just releasing music because I want to release music. And but when I check my stats, what I notice is that during the work week, my stats are high. So that
Mm.
means that people are actually streaming me while they're at work doing something. And back in school, um, when I was releasing my little mixtapes and handing them out around campus and things like that, one of my friends back then, he was like, "You write do it to it music," and it was like, "Wait, what? Where are you going with this? Do it to it music?" He was like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "No, you write music that we can do anything to. It's like we put on your tape and we can go drive to it, we can study to it, we can clean the house to it, we can chill to it, do whatever. It's you just write really nice ambient background music that just kind of like breaks the monotony of the day, but still helps you get through it." And I was like, "Oh, all right, cool." So I have been going under the moniker of Do It To It Music, and ever since he said that, ever since Bruce told me that day. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that people listen to it like yourself, to help get through the day because that's why I write it.
Yeah, yeah, it's super. So I like to touch on what people that I have on the podcast what they do. So as an interactive designer,
Hmm.
can you tell the listeners what you do as an interactive designer and what you enjoy most out of it?
Yeah, well, interactive design kind of came. That's what I referred to myself ever since the Flash days,
Mm-hmm.
because we were designing. Granted, every website is an interactive experience, but when we were doing, the multimedia type presentations that Flash allowed us to do back in the day, um, it was a lot more than just design because you actually had to think through the UX and everything else about how you're actually going to create this animation that allows individuals to still do what they want to do, whether it was for an e-commerce site or whether it was for play. So designing the interactions is where interactive designer comes from, which in today's term is, yeah, I'm focused on UI, I'm focused on UX. And when I really started getting heavy into accessibility, obviously Flash wasn't accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great for the beginning of my career, but towards the era where Flash started to fade out, it made sense to leave it alone, especially when I needed to start building things that were more accessible. And so from there, yeah, I took my design skills, my UX skills, and threw it back into the web, which is how I ended up where I am now. So with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, those three,
Yep.
everything else is just cake,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
So
know.
how has front end evolved from your perspective since those days, and what do you think has changed the most?
It's evolved a lot. I mean, especially when you think about how we have all of these different frameworks and libraries that didn't exist back then. Um, Being able to build design systems to help, small and large teams quickly prototype something out. Uh, I remember even with CSS, even if you just take CSS, I remember building websites before we even had CSS and doing complex table structures, and whether you were using Photoshop or what was it, freehand that
Yep.
Macromedia had, and then Fireworks, and you could sit there and cut out all the slices
Yep.
in those small table grids and everything, and having like umpteen thousand GIF images uploaded, and you had to choose which one was going to be a PNG GIF or a JPEG. Just just based on the way that the image was rendering. Going from that to being able to draw a complete UI inside CSS is just amazing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, my day to day, I love CSS. I'm always in there. I'm always doing something. SAS is my friend, and it's just wild when I think back to where we were doing we were doing so much to get these smaller websites. up and going to where now you can literally just put out something quality. And you see this trend on Twitter now, which I find funny. You can put out something quality just using CSS and HTML. You don't even need to have JavaScript, depending on the level of interactivity that you want. You
Right.
know, but even though we've had these advancements with the libraries and components, pick your flavor, whether it's you're writing it in Stencil, whether you're writing it in React or or Angular or anything like that. Not a whole lot has changed in the form of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in how we actually use them. Those foundations are just always going to be there. And I say always with the limited knowledge of what the future is going to bring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, there are times where I sit here and I'll think, it was like, what will building a website look like, 90 years from now?
Mm.
Will we still have HTML? I mean, granted, HTML is currently the foundation. It is the markup. It is the structure. It's the DOM. That's what gets spit out. Will we come up with some way to make that evolve into some other scaffolding?
Mm-hmm.
Don't know. Don't know what that looks like. But right now, this is what we have. And what, HTML5?
Yep.
HTML5 is where we are. And I saw a post the other day where someone was asking for additional HTML tags. And I was thinking to myself, well, damn, we have so many HTML tags right now. I mean, there's a ton of them that I don't even use, don't even need to use. So how many more do we need? And I remember a guy on Twitter hit me up. He replied to one of my posts. It was a couple of weeks ago. He was like, as a front end developer, all you need is div. I was like, wow. I was like, technically, yes, but yeah, and we're not going to go that route. I like to
Yeah.
write semantic markup.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Semantic
but
markup is always nice.
oh man, semantic markup is just lovely. It
Mm-hmm.
it it affords you all of the nice accessibility features that otherwise you would have to remember to add to your custom component. Guarantee you're going to miss something.
Yeah.
Always do. Always
Exactly.
do. Well,
So
yeah, I
let's.
mean, the web is evolved,
Mm-hmm.
but I think how we use the web has evolved more.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So I'm gonna softball this one into you.
Uh-oh.
So you and I, as well as a lot of other great folks in this, and the accessibility space on Twitter, talk a lot about, you know, inclusiveness and accessibility and all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the pitch. How important would you say is the role of accessibility in not only development but design as well?
Oh, bro, what? That's crazy. Hella important.
Yep.
It's
I told you it was a softball.
yeah, I can. Yeah, I saw the stitching on that one coming through. You trying to do start a fight? No, I'm kidding. Yo,
Well, if you look at my
so
Twitter,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You need to stop. You need to behave yourself.
I do.
No, don't keep doing you. Um, Accessibility is everybody's job, man. It's
Hmm.
not just the devs. It's not just design. It's also, the PMs, the copywriters,
Yep.
leadership. Everybody needs to be aware of that. But pointing to your question, it really does. Dev and design need to be in lockstep when it comes to accessibility.
Hmm.
And reason being, when we start developing something, we start developing an idea that happened sometime in the past.
Yep.
Somebody had an idea, came up with it, decided to mock it up to see what it would look like, see how it would actually work before it actually lands on the developer's desk for us to actually build it. Because before we can start building something, we need those specs. Those specs, you know, are oftentimes visual. going into that visual process, designers really do have to understand how the designs that they have to understand what they are designing and how it actually affects the user. They need to think about that user journey when they are designing it before it even gets to the point to where we're writing a stitch of code. That user journey should be planned out. How are our users with keyboards going to navigate through this in the event that they are designing some new widget that doesn't have historical context on, for users on how to use it, you know anything. They really need to think about the user journey. um, and they can't think of it in that binary sense where it's you either have, for instance, screen readers.
Hmm.
You're either a sighted user or you're a blind user. Can't think about that. What about the users in between that have low vision? You know,
Yep.
how you design form elements impacts them. How you group content together, the proximity of the content, related content, you know, that affects individuals with low vision. You've got screen magnification and browser zoom. If you have two elements that are at extreme sides of the screen, you can lose that context because now, depending on how that individual is browsing the site, that content is now separate from one another. Things like that. Color contrast, easy. Definitely think about that. Don't sit up there and just because it looks cool or whatnot, put light gray text on a white background because you want this clean aesthetic.
Mm.
I get it. Minimalism is dope. I love minimalism, especially in websites. The cleaner, the better. But I like Sumie. Sumie just uses, ink,
Yep.
breaks it down to the bare minimum, but still conveys the message. Designers have to do that as well.
Mm.
And then it comes, even with copywriting, because as they're working through designs, if they're not using Lorem, they're putting in some other mock copy.
Hmm.
But as they do it, we as designers tend to get attached to the design that we've done. And therefore, when someone comes back and says, hey, you need to make this change, there's that resistance there. So the designers have to understand what that resistance is, why that resistance is there, to changing it, and understand that they need to make changes for the better. It's not about the portfolio piece, it's about the end user itself. Um, Case in point, if you have links that aren't descriptive enough, like granted, you and I, we have sight, we can see a link that says click here. We can understand what that actually means. But for someone who may have a cognitive disability or whatnot, and they come in and they see click here, they don't have the context of that.
Mm.
So providing more context in these call to actions, is definitely key for helping out accessibility from that aspect. But all that comes from the design and the conversations that happen during the design process before they even make it to dev. And we're starting to in the industry, we're starting to talk about shift left, where you get ahead of this as much as you can. When I worked for an e-commerce company, a lot of times my team wasn't brought in until weeks before the project had to be built, and we would constantly butt heads with marketing and creative and even leadership, telling them we need to be involved in the process earlier because you guys are asking us to build something because you saw it someplace else
Hmm.
without intimate knowledge of how our system works. So you're asking for X, Y, and Z when our system doesn't support that. We have to build something for that. Same thing with design. If you go off and set the expectation of how a design should look versus how it actually works, then you got a problem. And far too often, solving that problem falls on the dev team when it shouldn't. It needs to start upstream. It needs to start upstream where leadership is buying into it. and the actual project itself is being sold. So setting those expectations. So yeah, for designers, like I said, it's everybody's responsibility, but at the in the embryonic stages of a project's idea, accessibility definitely needs to be inside the fold.
Yeah. Yeah, I am a big uh, supporter of from kickoff to handoff.
Mm-hmm.
Accessibility is crucial. So
Mm-hmm.
I hear you on that.
And I
So
and what's the regular tweet that you like to put out? Accessibility is a right,
accessibility is a right, not a privilege.
not a privilege. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, so I know you and I both talk to a lot of people that are curious and interested in getting into the accessibility space.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to folks that we haven't spoken to on Twitter or in other places that are looking to get into that space and start their journey in accessibility?
The first step is always just to start doing it. Start doing the research, understanding how accessibility fits into what you're doing at that moment. Speaking to the developer who is starting to realize that the product that they're working on isn't accessible and they want to understand how. Do an inventory, learn how to do those testings. For individuals who are not comfortable using screen readers or any other assistive tech that's built into the machines, often I like to suggest that, all right, let's go to automated route first.
Mm,
So I often recommend using Axe,
yeah.
the Chrome plugin for doing some automated testing. Do an audit of one of your page views, see what happens. And when that comes back, research how to fix those. And then when you start researching how to fix those, you actually start learning about how accessibility plays into your product. And then, the next question I get was, well, what if I receive pushback for, you know, wanting to integrate this? Then I ask them candidly, you really got somebody who's going to push back on you for doing the right thing? Take it off of you and put it on them. Have them answer that question. When you ask somebody else, so you really don't want to do the right thing, they usually back off because no one wants to appear as a jerk or
Mm-hmm.
come off as an asshole. It's like, oh, I had one guy, he was just like, I really want to start implementing these things, but I don't know how. I said, start putting them in.
Yep.
He said, what do you mean put them in? I said, when you're writing your code, if you are working on a particular view at that point in time and you recognize that there are accessibility issues in there, fix those issues and merge those issues in. What's somebody going to do when it goes through code review? They're going to tell you, hey, this, you got to take this accessibility part out. Again, nobody wants to look like that jerk going in there. And you saw the light bulb go off over his head. He was like, oh yeah, I can just do that. I'm like, yeah. It's like, yeah, that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
You start the fact that you're showing interest and wanting to build better products that are accessible shows that you are willing to take the steps.
Yeah.
So it's learn what those issues are, learn how to fix them. Often it starts at the markup level. I tell people, what does your markup look like? Is it div soup? Are you using semantic markup? Are you adding on clicks to spans and divs? Yeah. Why? Well, because, I was just styling a div. I said, you can style a button the same way and you get all the accessibility that you need from that button and it's semantic. Oh, yeah. Again, I love it when the light bulbs go off. It's great. When you start to really show
Yep.
individuals that start with the basics,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes it easier for them to transition into, building accessible things. So yeah, that's me. I tell them start here, start implementing it. Implementation means that you are actually working in working to actually make things better. Start introducing it, and then after you've worked it into, like, say for instance, a couple of iterations of your project, tell your team about it. Tell leadership about it. Be like, look, this is this is how our product or this particular view behaved before I made the accessibility enhancements, and then walk them through the benefits of those enhancements. And I've seen, people in leadership actually start to get it. They unfortunately people have to see the results before they actually believe them,
Yep.
you know. So a lot of times it's, you just got to do the work, show them the benefit, and then when they see the benefit, everybody's on board with it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyone starting off new, do the research. There's plenty of resources out there. You have the WCAG that you can read through. Yes, that is the de facto. But there's tons of blogs out there. Chatting with people like you and I on Twitter is another way. Chris DeMars, Marina, Lamardo, Scott Davis, Marcy Sutton. Hitting up the accessibility community on Twitter is a good one. And then there's also the Alley Slack channel. We're all in there, always talking about everything. Even the design system Slack channel has an accessibility site. Yep. Or accessibility channel in there. So, just get involved in the community, and you start to pick those things up. You start to gain that knowledge and gain that experience and gain that confidence to move forward, to incorporate accessibility into, your day to day and whatever it is that you're working on.
Right. And so you triggered a memory.
Oh, but you have memories?
Well, they're fading fast at this at this advancement in age, but yes, few and far between now. But I worked for a company, and I think we've talked about this before, maybe. Uh, I went to a stakeholder and I said, okay, I would like, to put time into our projects for
Mm-hmm.
accessibility. And he shot back with, we don't have disabled users.
Mm-hmm.
So it does happen.
Oh yeah, yeah, it does.
It
It does.
does.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I've had to deal with that before, but that's where it goes. That's where it falls back to showing them, proving to them. One of my coworkers the other day, um, he was so happy because we actually had a customer write in who has low vision, and she uses browser zoom and everything. And there was a particular section of the app that she had a problem with.
Hmm.
And he was so happy that, that she contacted him and he interviewed her and everything. And we were able to work out a fix because it was a part of the app that we weren't actually looking at that point. We didn't have it slated to do any work. But when this surfaced, even leadership was like, oh, we didn't realize that this was a problem.
Hmm.
You know, um, those real world interactions like that often shine a whole lot of light on the situation, and then make them understand it's like, oh yeah, maybe we do need to deal with this. But yeah, man, I've had leadership, I've had designers talking about we don't have disabled users using our website. I'm like, really? Are you that naive? You're kidding me.
Yeah, and this certain stakeholder,
Oh,
it was funny too because he was wearing glasses, and I said, "You do know you have an assistive technology."
on your face.
Yes. So it
So
was
what happens if you take your glasses off? Read this for me when you take your glasses off. Oh, I can't see that. Make the font bigger.
right,
Oh, mhm.
right. That and you know, you and I had to explain situational uh
Oh,
temporary impairments,
yeah.
disabilities. And
Mhm.
you get a child in the arm and you have your phone on the other hand and you're trying to, engage
So,
in a meetings, for instance. Yeah. I
yes, situational is what you've seen me with. with my son, you know,
Yes.
having to, I got him here and yeah. And my wife just cracks up. She was like, I'm glad that thing's accessible because if it wasn't, you would have problems right now. I'm like, you were right about that.
And I
Or
got, yeah,
mess with, just jam your clicking finger,
yeah.
jam your index finger.
That's another story too, because so
Oh
it,
gosh, what did you do? You injure yourself?
I did. I I was working on something and I said, okay, time to take a break. It was lunchtime or something like that. I said,
Hmm.
I'll drive down to the store, I'll grab a bite to eat and come back and, finish working. So I got in the
Hmm.
car and I'm driving down. It's a very sunny day and I go to take the sun visor and pull it down. Well, I missed as I was pulling it and I socked myself in the eye. And I had to literally tell this stakeholder that things like that happen. Now, granted, it's at my own self deprecation, but it happened. I'm glad to be, patient zero, but it did happen.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. I mean, I've injured myself before, and just getting around, and you're like, thank God for the curb cuts.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
thank God for the ramps and things like that. But as it pertains to the web, yeah, not everybody uses the web, computers, mice, keyboards. We don't use technology the same way.
Hmm.
We just don't,
Right.
and it's it's really bad. Well, it's not bad. It's unfortunate that the norm has been the norm has been to build and design with that bias,
Hmm.
you know, that developers or designers or whomever, they use themselves as the template for everything that goes out because they are building it for themselves instead of looking outside at the real world and at the various possibilities of how someone can actually use things. You've seen that meme before where it says um, design, user experience, and you see the design, and it's a nice manicured pathway that's going through, and it connects 90-degree angles. User experience, the person just wore a path through the grass,
Yep.
shortcuts. You
Yep.
know, a lot of times people don't think that way,
Right.
and it's really true. I mean, there's just a range of use cases out there that fall on that bell curve, and we have to remember to design for those outer edges. If you
Hmm.
catch those outer edges, you definitely going to catch the center of the bell
Yeah.
curve, you know and like you said, situational. Are you being blinded right now? Yep. All right, how do you fix that? Use your visor. um, there was
Just
one.
don't punch yourself in the eye.
Man, don't punch yourself in the face either. I mean, don't add to the problem. Good grief. One day my wife was driving. This is Atlanta, pre-pandemic. Atlanta traffic is wild,
Mm.
and we had a Subaru with the stop assist,
Yep.
the brake assist.
Yep.
I look at that as assistive tech because brake assist kicks in when the driver doesn't react fast enough, which means that if you're not reacting fast enough, you were distracted.
Mm.
A distraction is cognitive.
Yep.
And she was in the car one day, headed up to work, I believe. And, something caught her attention over here, like I think a driver swerved. She looked over here to make sure that this driver wasn't going to hit her, not knowing that the person in front had just slammed on their brakes. Driver
Mm.
assist caught everything. Boom. That's real world example of how tech can help with some type of impairment.
Yep.
Think about when we apply that to the web, error handling inside forms,
Mm-hmm.
being able to fill out a form. What type of affordances do we allow for filling out forms online?
Mm.
You know, is the person coming in on a touch device? Are they using the keyboard? Um, how is it that they're actually able to interact, input, move through each of the fields? Do we do the autocomplete for them, which helps in some cases to be a problem in others? Do we do auto masking for them so that it automatically formats the data
Mm.
that goes through? You have someone, you don't want to design a complex form that is going to require a ton of interaction to be able to get the information through, because you have no idea if that person has two hands, one hand, no hands, what they're doing to actually get it through. um, Thinking about ease of use and reducing friction will definitely help, you know make the products that we are building a lot more user friendly and robust, because now they can be, you can apply them to various situations for various individuals that have, you know any method of manipulating or interacting with it. So
Mm. Yeah.
they situational, permanent, temporary, all those things have to be taken into account. But again, it goes back to that, to understanding the user's journey.
Yep.
How do you set that journey up? How do you go from point A to point B successfully without tripping up the individual? Doing those empathy tests where you have your team go through it, or you have a team that's not familiar with what it is that you're building go through it, and finding those sticky points. Do that user testing, do those evaluations. That's how you catch all of that. And it's
Yeah.
great, especially if you have individuals with various disabilities on your team or working at the company. I had, it was great. Last company that I worked with, we actually did. And, you know, they were valuable teammates because they gave us some insight to some of the product or to some of the friction points inside our product that we didn't even know existed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we were doing manual testing and things like that, they were like, "Ah, yeah, no, I have a problem with this." Word, really? Cool. Thanks for
Yep.
pointing that out.
Yep.
Being, and also just being open to even needing to fix it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I had received a great piece of advice a couple of years ago, I think it was, from Derek Featherstone, and
Hmm.
we were talking about my situation with the stakeholder giving a little
Hmm.
pushback, and he told me, and I like to tell people this too, and pass this little tidbit along is when they push back a little harder,
Hmm.
and like you had alluded to, earlier, make them realize you ask them the questions
Hmm.
that they're asking of you, uh, and a lot of the time it works,
Hmm. Yeah.
if not all. Granted, my situation was a lot different because they kept waffling back and forth. Um, an extreme circumstance, I'll call it, but
Right.
there's a lot of with my case, there was a lot of unknowns.
Hmm.
One being lack of knowledge as far as web
Fair.
and technical goes.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, let alone having limited knowledge in how the tech actually comes together and works. But then when you throw accessibility into that, if you didn't understand the basics, ain't no way in the world you catching this over here.
Right.
And it's just like these big corporations that are out there, especially like the high profile ones, last year and the year before, where they were like, oh my gosh, we got caught. Our sites aren't accessible and it's going to cost us, umpteen $1 million to build the accessibility into it. And you're like, why?
Mm,
Why? Who
mm.
told you that? Well, we got to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, do it.
Yeah, yeah. Just get it done.
Literally. When you upgrade something, retrofit it. Because obviously you're in a retrofitting phase of things now. Get your developers to build it correctly.
Yep,
Is that a span? Yes. Is it clickable? Yes. Turn it to a button. Does it go someplace? Yes. Make it a link.
yep, yep.
It's that knowledge that they don't have.
Yeah. So we're coming up on our time almost, are we?
Are
Yes.
we? That was
A
quick.
little bit. A little bit. So I'm going to swing this over to the music side of things.
Oh, goodness.
Uh, when's the new album dropping? Is my first one.
Um, it is in the works, honestly. Started working on some new music during the uh, during Christmas break over the holidays. Um, Felt inspired, started putting some new stuff down. It's going to be another lo-fi, chilled out album, just like before. Um, Also got a few more. I got some more soundtrack stuff that's coming up.
Nice.
So been working on that. Been talking with a an old friend of mine who I used to write music with back in college. He and I are still really good friends, and he is still heavily active in the music industry. And he recently approached me, and he was like, "Look, I got some ideas to actually start doing more film composing and things like that. You want to join up?" So talking with him about that, more information on that as it develops, I'll let you know. But yeah, I got a couple of things, I got a couple of irons in the fire right now that I'm working on. But this new project, I'm actually having fun with it. And my little one, when he comes in, it's like he likes to sit on my lap as I'm either producing the tracks and whatnot, and then he wants to reach over and his little 1-year-old fingers start beating on the keys and things. It's great. But I love having him in here with me because he just bounces off beat right now. Come on, boy. I hope he gets some rhythm. He comes in and he starts bouncing around and enjoying the music. And I, I love the look on his face when he hits a key or he hits something on the drum pad and he hears the sound and he looks back at me like, "Did you hear that?" Like for my approval is awesome. I'm like, "Yep, keep
There you
going,
go.
keep
Yes.
going." I'm just looking forward to the day where I come in here and I hear some music playing and it's him putting something together. You know,
I'll look forward to that day too when I'm in my rocking chair snacking on a lobster roll.
man, who knows? By the time, who knows how we're going to be listening to music then? It might just be a direct download, just straight to your brain. Just call us Neo. But so
Yeah.
yeah, I got a couple of projects coming. I'll let you
Nice.
know when they drop. I have not decided if it's going to be a full album yet or an EP, mainly
Okay.
because in the industry, in the music industry now, when you think about it, we really consume music in a different way. We don't listen to music like we did like in the early 2000s.
Hmm.
You know, people listen to songs. People don't listen to albums.
Yep.
You know, so a lot of times it's not even worth putting out like a full album. Just put out some singles, put out EP with 4 or 5 tracks on it, and then keep it moving. Also helps to keep things fresh too, because a lot of times when you're putting an album together, there's the pressure of making sure that you have 7+ songs on there. Well, what if you have writer's block
Hmm.
and you have a project that you want to get out and you get stuck writing it and then you fall out of love with it, and then the project starts to suffer.
Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, I'm really in the mood right now. I have these, these 4 tracks that I put together, these 4 records that I put together. Let me go ahead and release them and get them out there. That's where I am now. If I start to get bored with a project, I'll just stop writing. I'll go back to the pieces that are already finished, mix them, master them, make sure that they are production ready, and go. And then revisit the other ones, chop them up, use them as samples in something new. Find a different route of inspiration for them. So, yeah, I got some new stuff though.
Well, that's good to know because I need some more chill music to snack on my lobster rolls too.
Gotcha. Well, I got a couple of I like the 2 that I have right now. One is called Warm Water, and the other one is Oh Yeah. And when either one of those tracks come on, my little one immediately starts dancing. He loves those.
Nice, nice.
Warm Water puts him to sleep, which is it's a nice, chill, relaxing, dusty. When you listen to it, it has a nostalgic feel to it. When you hear it, it will remind you of listening to, like, say, Art of Noise on
Mm.
an old demagnetized cassette.
Yep.
That's the feel. You'll hear that hum. And granted, now it's artificial, as
Yeah.
we add the special effects in to make it sound like it's coming off of a tape player. You have the machine noise and things like that. But yeah, stuff like that
Yeah.
is coming. So I got you.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this: what kind of music do you like, and what do you listen to when you're working, or do you listen to music while you're working?
Actually, I do. And my taste in music is all over the place, dude. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I have everything from death metal to classical to hip hop to country. You know, um, one genre that I'm really stuck on right now is Japanese math rock. Like
Yes.
Jucho coming out of Japan and Elephant Gym. Yo, listening to those arrangements, the mathematical complication, just the complexity, mathematical complexity of how they arrange their music is just astounding to me. I love the way that they play. I love the the syncopation of the rhythms, the mix matched time signatures that go in, but they all gel just so nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very just a serious group of talented people. But yeah, it really depends on my mood for that day. Like when I produce tracks at the tempo of my heartbeat. So if I'm having a chill day, obviously that's a down tempo. If I'm having a hype day where everything has been moving fast, then yeah, then the music is up there. Same with what I listen to. Um, I can go from listening to death metal, Kill Switch Engage, to listening to you know the planets or a classical piece. Sometimes I really like I'll throw in soundtracks, listening
Yep.
to soundtracks, listening to anything, and then I'll go. I even have a playlist of white noise.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so
I
yeah,
yeah.
it goes everywhere.
Yeah. I have a playlist of uh indigenous music. I have a
Mm,
playlist of
mhm,
nature sounds, which puts me right out.
mhm.
And you know, whenever I'm on Twitter, I'm usually listening to death metal. That's how fast my heartbeat's going.
All right, all right. So I got to put together a Twitter playlist for you because I need to calm you down.
Yeah, you do.
You can be raging.
Yeah, if anybody see my timeline, oh, they're probably
That
what?
explains a lot, bro.
Yeah,
That explains
exactly.
a lot. Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
that
but
explains a lot, man.
yeah,
Now I know. I'll be like, Todd, what are you listening to?
oh, I'm listening to Slayer today.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna need you to put on Elmo.
There have been days I've been tempted to do that. But no, the wide variety, I love it because that's the same with me now. I don't do country. I just never really got into it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't.
I get it. I get it. I know a lot of people that do not do
Yeah,
country. For me, it's good music is good music, regardless of the
mm,
genre.
yeah. I, I mean, I shouldn't say that I'm not into it totally. I mean, Johnny Cash is country,
Hmm.
and I love Johnny Cash. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
who doesn't?
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's somebody, but
Probably. That's always
it's Johnny Cash. It's it's very limited, I should say. But you know, the classical stuff. I mean, I do, you know, a lot of the '80s. You know, now that I
oh
look
yeah.
back in the '80s stuff, you know, that's stuff we grew up on.
Oh yeah.
And now that I look and say, oh my God, that was 40 years ago, I go into a little ball and I start weeping a little bit, and then I have to turn on some ambient stuff.
Man, road trip music,
Hmm.
the 80s genre is great for road trips. And I miss road trips. Is our my family, we like to travel a lot. We would
Yeah.
jump in the car and we would go out, or if we're not on a plane.
Hmm.
But one of our favorite tracks to drive to is Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Tears for
Yep.
Fears. It's
Yep.
just when that song kicks in and it just marries the road, you know? But yeah, you're right. 80s, oh gosh, there's some great music that came out
Yeah.
of the 80s. The UK was definitely owning it then. But then you had the 80s rock coming out, but then you had the US R&B
Hmm.
during the 80s that was killing it. And then you jump up into the 90s, and then 90s R&B and 90s hip hop was just kind of like that was it. They took over.
Yeah, that was on a separate plane in
Yeah, it
itself.
was.
Yeah.
And then we got to 2000, and I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, I don't know either, but we won't
I
go
don't
there.
know. Oh
We
yeah,
won't
we're
go.
not gonna go there. I don't know what the hell happened.
Here's something. A lot of people that I talk to when I talk music with them, they're very, I guess, surprised to hear this. You know, I love jazz. I
That doesn't
love.
surprise me though. I mean, why would they be surprised by that?
I,
The
I,
reason it doesn't surprise me is because you listen to my music, and my music has a strong jazz influence.
it does. It
So it's just
does.
like,
When I say, yeah, I listen to Miles Davis or uh, Thelonious Monk, they're like, whoa,
so
Pasty Man listens to that?
so like I told you before, growing up with a family that was around, Motown and all that, I started listening to jazz at a very, very, very young age,
Mm,
and one of like the alias that my friends gave me growing up, because you mentioned Monk, they called me Monk.
yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that I play like Sphere at all. No, but I was that one that they knew that played jazz piano, and so that's how they made the association. So yeah, to this day, people still refer to me as Monk, especially even people that are still in the industry.
I can
Um,
see that. I
that's
can
just a
see that.
respect thing. I had a friend of mine in high school. His name is Kevin Anchor, professional jazz pianist. Dude was amazing,
Hmm.
uh, and he and I used to just have jam sessions on the piano. And one day he told me, he said, "You know who you play like?" I was like, "Who?" He said, "You play like Ramsey Lewis." I was like, "Word? Really?" And I started thinking about it. I was like, I listened to Ramsey, but I haven't listened to Ramsey since I was a kid. His music was good, but it wasn't his CD, and his records were not the ones that I would always go to. And then one day I was talking with my mom and I told her what Kevin said. And I said, that's funny. She said, that's funny. I said, why? She goes, because when I was pregnant with you, I used to put headphones on my belly and play Miles Davis and Ramsey Lewis albums.
Mm.
I was like, oh, like interesting.
Mm.
Okay, all right, I get it. So there was some influence there. And you brought up Miles Davis, and my mom told me one day while they were all out, um, she said they actually had a chance to meet Miles Davis. I was like,
Wow.
that's cool. She goes,
Yeah.
yeah, but what you don't know is that you were 2 years old at the time and he actually held you.
Oh wow.
I said, what? I said, I got help by Miles Davis. I
Oh
was
wow.
walking around like, yeah,
There you go.
I came in direct contact with greatness. That's what's up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know we're coming up on time because you've got a hard stop, and
Yeah.
I don't want to. I got a few questions left. These ones are pretty straightforward and easy.
Hmm.
I'd like to wrap up the podcast with these questions. So,
Okay.
uh, what about the web these days excites you and keeps you excited in what you do?
CSS.
Okay.
CSS for real. What we're able to do now with CSS versus how it's come, uh, I love it. You know, remember when we had to do interactions using JavaScript,
Mm.
states, things like that. I love being able to use CSS in place of JS to make something happen.
Yep.
Uh, just the level of flexibility that we have from a creative standpoint, being able to draw with it, it's freaking amazing. You see these amazing code pens come out from individuals that are just pushing CSS just to the edge. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So yeah, CSS is
Absolutely. If there were one thing you could change about the web today, what would that be?
tech bros.
Absolutely. And if
Tech
anybody's seen
bros.
my timeline,
Tech bros, man. You know, no, but in all honesty, what I would love to see change is, and I guess it's already going there, but I would love to see more and more um, people embrace accessibility because, like you and I, we grew up in at the end of the space race, but we had technology. We had the Ataris, we had Nintendo and everything. And then all of a sudden we got Apple computers. And, when we're in school, we've got Apples all over the place. And then all of a sudden we have the internet. We grew up with this. We are tech savvy going forward. It's not like all this is brand new to us.
mm-hmm,
And as we get older, we're still going to expect things to work as they should. But the
mm-hmm,
thing is, as we get older, it's almost inevitable that at some point in time, we're going to have some form of disability, eyesight, hearing, motor. You know, I want to see more and more developers change their way of thinking and start incorporating accessibility and getting serious about accessibility in the products that they build because we as tech savvy individuals will never stop being tech savvy. It's not like we just reach an age and then just forget all about it. No, it doesn't work like that.
yep,
We're still gonna. I'm pretty sure that people like you and I, individuals, all of us, we're still going to be using computers all the way up until we can't anymore.
yep,
Mobile phones. Come on,
yep,
just about everybody and their mom has a mobile phone. They're not going anywhere. We're not leaving tech behind. So
mm-hmm,
more we need more teams to actually step up. We need more creatives. We need more PMs and executives and developers to actually start stepping up and making sure that they are building accessible products because you know everybody gets old. Everybody
yeah,
has some need,
yep,
and technology just is always going to be there with us. So yeah, I
right,
like to see that.
yep. So we've spoken a lot about this today, but I'm going to ask this anyways. Favorite part of front end development that you love the most? And I know what you're going to say. And we've already, like I said, we've already said it, but what do you like to, this goes along with the theme of with the podcast is nerd out over.
Yeah. I nerd out over accessibility. I nerd out over semantic markup. It's funny. I had an interview a few years ago, and me and the individual that was interviewing me literally nerded out about CSS to the point to where the third person that was in the interview was like, "Are you guys really done? Are you guys done?" Because you guys just all of a sudden became best friends and just geeked the hell out about CSS. And I was like, "Yep, yep, sure did." But yeah, that's I nerd out hard on semantic markup and accessibility in CSS for real.
So, as we get to time, we got a few minutes left. I'm gonna do what let everybody do on the podcast, and that is let my guest, this being you today, let the listeners know what you have currently going on, where people can find you.
Currently going on. Well, we already spoke about it. Working on new music project. Looking forward to releasing that probably early summer.
Okay.
So that'll be coming out. And when I say early summer, I'm talking like late May, early June is when that's probably going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then also too, I'm looking for. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I want to build a platform agnostic um, component library that's focused on accessibility. And I've had people come up and they're like, "Why are you going to do that? So many people have already done it." And if I listen to that type of rhetoric, then it would stop me. But when you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, there are that's the case. Why do we have React? Why do we have all the various frameworks that are out there now? It's because the current ones that are out there didn't solve the need that that individual needed.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've been seeing, a lot of times where the things that target accessibility fall short is in the documentation,
Yep.
but then also in the practicality of it.
Mm.
They're built for a specific use case instead of thinking about the project or thinking about the use holistically. Who can use it? I don't. That's why I say platform agnostic. I don't care who uses this. I want them to be able to use it, and it's going to start from a semantic level and work from the ground up. So yeah, regardless of the naysayers that say, you shouldn't do one, you should just start contributing to one that exists. Now,
Yep.
so that's the next thing that I have coming down. Yeah, and it's going to be called Allison.
Okay. Looking forward to that.
Yep. So
And
that's
people can
already
find.
in play. Um, it'll be open source. It'll be on GitHub.
Okay.
So hopefully I have that in play towards the end of the year.
Yeah. And you're on Spotify, I know, and you're on
Yes. Yep.
Title and in all
Yep.
the music
Yeah.
players. Yep.
Yep. All underneath my name, Homer Games.
Yep.
Yeah. All the major um, streaming services globally,
Mm-hmm.
worldwide. I was really excited when I got notification that my music was actually being played uh, on internet radio over in Africa and in
Oh, wow.
Japan. I was like, oh, cool, good deal.
Nice. Very
So
nice.
yeah, just got recently added over there. So that's a good thing. So yeah, all global. You can find me on Twitter, Circlebox, XIRCLEBOX. That's me. Yeah, primarily there, running my mouth about tech, chiming in with you, starting fires,
Yeah,
going after tech bros.
we won't go after that. We won't go any further on my Twitter experience today.
You have a very colorful Twitter experience.
I do, and yeah, that's I won't even go. I'm not gonna go into that right now. Uh, so you got your music, you have all this stuff going on. Anything else? Your personal site. We can, we can put a
Oh
bunch of links
gosh.
in the show notes. But
Yeah, you've heard that. You've heard the saying, "The cobbler's kids need new shoes."
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's that. Apply that to my website. I'm pretty sure anybody could say that. It's like, put it this way: the last time I updated my website, I used Bootstrap because I just wanted to get it up quickly. And granted, when you look at it, it doesn't look like Bootstrap. But I had one guy go, "Oh yeah, I can see you're using a WordPress theme." I'm like, "No, that's actually homegrown." He was like, "No, it's not." I said, "Look at the source code." He goes, "Oh, you did write this behind your eyes. It's not WordPress." But when I look at it, I'm like, I don't need all this bloat. So yeah, I'm going to be rebuilding my website and paring it down. It'll be just nice and simple
Yeah,
HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript if I want to add it.
yeah. And I knew it was Bootstrap when I visited your website because I do.
Everybody does. You saw the columns in there, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Uh huh.
Yes, I did.
Yep. The
Uh,
columns. I'm like, oh, I gotta, yeah. So
yeah.
again, what I put that up maybe. Good grief, man! That thing's probably 7 years old now.
Mm,
That was back when Bootstrap was shiny.
yep.
That with jQuery, everybody was doing Bootstrap and jQuery at that time.
jQuery still works.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So let's. I know we got to wrap it up. I want
Yeah.
to thank you, Homer, for coming on today and talking with me. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for
You
the
know,
invite. I appreciate it. I had fun.
absolutely.
This was good.
Yeah, and lobster rolls are in the mail.
All right, dude. For real. When the pandemic is over, I'm. Hey, El Todd, open up. I'm coming up to Maine. We're gonna do some. We're gonna do some lobster rolls.
We're gonna go drive up and down the coast with 80s music blaring in the on the radio.
I'm okay with that. Just know that when that happens, if the right song comes on, we will probably have to get over so my wife can get out and dance.
I can dance. Well, I won't use the word dance, but I will get out and move as best as I can to the music. How's that?
I will move to the music. All right. We'll take that. We'll take that. We will definitely take that.
All right,
But no,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I appreciate the invite. I appreciate having me on. I love the podcast that you're doing. It's dope. The Zeltman interview that you did was great because yeah, that was nostalgic for me because I remember reading his book back in the day, and it's hilarious because dude has not changed his avatar since day one.
Nope.
Nope. Yeah, I mean it's that iconic blue hat. And hearing the bit about how the designers went through and came up with the cover, how it was all pixelated and it was jacked up, and they tried to make it clean and made him look all crazy. That was funny. That had me dying. So,
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. I took the leap and I said, you know what? I'm gonna do a podcast. I've been wanting to do a podcast for years.
there you
So,
go.
uh, and I found it fitting because he's been a big influence on my career as well as probably yours and everybody else.
Hmm.
Everybody else's we know
Yeah.
that does front end too. So,
You know who I miss in the game? Remember
who's that?
Hillman Curtis?
Yes, yes. Jeffrey and I spoke about him
Yeah.
briefly. Yeah, yep.
Yeah. I think about the work that Hillman Curtis did as a person and then also as a company.
Hmm.
you know, because they were a big influence on me back then. Them, Too Advanced, Gabble Corp, all those. Yeah, but Hillman
Yeah,
Curtis, they put out some really nice work.
yep, yep.
So
Totally agree. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on.
thank you.
Al Always a pleasure to talk to you. Pleasure to see you. We're definitely, when the pandemic's over, it's going to be lobster rolls and 80s music and dancing. Well, you know, I'll
Mhm.
try. Anyways, so we'll wrap it up here. Thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Front End Nerdery podcast. I'll be back next month with a new guest, new topics, and conversation about front end design, development, and more. If you would please rate this podcast on your podcast device of choice. I'm Todd Libby, and this has been the Front End Nerdery podcast. Thanks, and see you next time.